Welcome to this explainer. All right, let's just dive right in. Now, I want you to picture a world completely devoid of airplanes, satellites, Google Maps, or the internet. No quick translations, no global university networks, nothing. Yet, in the 11th century, one man managed to cross brutal deserts, warring kingdoms, and completely alien languages. Why did he do all that? Well, to uncover the absolute truth about a deeply mysterious land. Today, we're unpacking the extraordinary life of Al-Biruni. He was a scholar who managed to do something practically unheard of in the medieval world. He actually sought to understand a conquered civilization rather than just conquering it.
So what is India really? That right there was the burning question that drove him. Now, it sounds like a totally simple question to us today, but back in the 11th century, it was a question almost nobody dared to ask. At the time, India was basically shrouded in a thick fog of mystery for anyone living outside its borders. The outside world really only knew of India through these wildly exaggerated rumors, tall tales spun by travelers, or the incredibly narrow viewpoints of invading armies. But you see, Al-Biruni, he absolutely wasn't interested in the fantasies. He was looking for exactly this. Not rumors, not gold, just the truth. It's absolutely crucial to understand this contrast. While other travelers were out there spreading wild mythical fantasies, and traders were just hunting for untapped markets and gold, and kings were literally just looking for more dirt to conquer, Al-Biruni was on a totally different mission. He was hunting for pure knowledge. He wanted to understand the real India, the people, the science, the philosophy, the math, and the incredibly complex social systems that tied it all together.
Part 1. The Quest for Real India. Seeking Truth in the 11th Century. Let's set the stage. To really grasp how a mind this unique popped up in an era that was defined by brutal, relentless wars, we have to travel to the vibrant intellectual hubs of Central Asia. Al-Biruni was born way back in 973 CE in a region called Khorasan, which is near present-day Uzbekistan and Turkmenistan. And this place, it was an absolute melting pot. We're talking a mixing bowl of Greek science, Persian traditions, and Islamic scholarship. From the time he was a kid, Al-Biruni was just different. While the other young guys in his town were chasing political power, military rank, were just getting rich, this kid was obsessed with complex calculations and observations. By the time he hit his youth, he was already widely known as an absolute genius.
And the sheer scale of his intellect? Honestly, it's staggering. We're not talking about a guy who just casually dabbled in a few subjects. He mastered the whole shebang: mathematics, astronomy, geography, medicine, philosophy, multiple languages, history, even chronology and religion. It's like a giant puzzle of human knowledge, and he had all the pieces. He was operating at a level of proficiency across so many diverse fields that it's mind-boggling. He was completely set up to be one of the greatest scholars of his age. But, as it often does, war had other plans for him.
Which brings us to Part 2. The Two Conquerors, the Sword versus the Pen.
Over in Central Asia, this incredibly ambitious and frankly militarily brilliant ruler was on the rise. His name was Mahmud of Ghazni. Mahmud's rapid expansion and his eventual attack on Khwarizm would completely flip Al-Biruni's life upside down. When Mahmud conquered the region, Al-Biruni was taken to Ghazni as a captive. And this right here creates one of history's most explosive contrasts. On one hand, you've got Mahmud, the ultimate conqueror of lands, wielding swords, obsessed with wealth and military glory. And on the other hand, you have Al-Biruni, a conqueror of knowledge, armed only with questions, obsessed with truth and ideas. They are literal polar opposites. Yet, for the rest of their lives, their paths were tangled together.
And here is where we hit a massive historical irony. Mahmud's repeated, highly destructive military invasions deep into the Indian subcontinent were the exact mechanism that opened the door for Al-Biruni. If it wasn't for this warlord's violent campaigns, our brilliant scholar probably never would have set foot in India. And without Al-Biruni tagging along, the medieval world might never have understood India with such incredible scientific depth.
Moving on to Part 3. Decoding a New World. Hearing India in its own voice.
So, when Al-Biruni finally arrives in India, he is immediately smacked in the face by a civilization that is radically, fundamentally different from the Islamic world he grew up in. We are talking entirely new gods, totally unfamiliar philosophies, completely different social structures, and complex rituals. And remember, this is the 11th century. Today, if we travel abroad, we have Wikipedia in our pockets and we still somehow mess up ordering a cup of coffee, right? Well, Al-Biruni had zero translation apps, no digital dictionaries, not even a basic tourist guidebook. Trying to genuinely understand this foreign land required a level of dedication that is almost superhuman.
Actually, historians today often call him the world's first anthropologist, and it's all because of his rigorous, revolutionary methodology. Step 1. He completely threw out all the secondhand myths. He wasn't having it. Step 2, and honestly, this is mind-blowing for the era, he sat down and learned Sanskrit completely from scratch. Armed with the native language, he could bypass all the local rumors, read the original ancient text for himself, and speak directly face-to-face with Indian scholars. He absolutely refused to accept the outside world's watered-down version of India. He wanted to hear India speaking in its very own voice.
Part 4. The immortal book, Kitab-ul-Hind.
Decades of this grueling, rigorous study eventually culminated in his absolute masterpiece, Kitab-ul-Hind. It translates roughly to a critical study of what India says, and it was a serious, objective attempt to study a whole civilization from the ground up. The way he pulled this off was a total game-changer. Centuries, literally centuries before it became a standard academic practice, Al-Biruni essentially invented the field of comparative cultural studies. He took Indian philosophy, Indian astronomy, and social systems, and he meticulously compared them against Greek philosophy, Islamic scholarship, and Persian traditions. And perhaps the most refreshing part? His tone. He loudly praised the achievements he respected, but he was also totally comfortable saying, you know what, I just don't understand this part.
And let me tell you, there was a lot he deeply, deeply admired. To Al-Biruni, India wasn't just a conquered territory. It was one of the premier centers of knowledge on the planet. He was completely blown away by their arithmetic and their incredibly precise astronomical calculations. He had massive respect for their logic, and he spent a huge chunk of his life trying to wrap his head around really weighty philosophical concepts like karma, rebirth, and moksha. By documenting all of this in Arabic, he basically turned himself into a massive intellectual bridge, translating these highly advanced Indian sciences for the broader Islamic world.
But because he was a true scientist at heart, he didn't just wear rose-colored glasses and blindly praise everything he saw. He made some very sharp, critical, and objective observations. On the sociological front, he noticed a crippling rigidity within the strict caste system. He argued that this led to a kind of cultural isolation that really stifled intellectual exchange. Politically, he saw severe fragmentation. While he had a lot of praise for the fierce warrior culture of the Rajput kingdoms, he hit the nail on the head by pointing out that their constant disunity was exactly what kept them from mounting a successful, large-scale resistance against outside invasions.
Which brings us to our final section, Part 5. A Legacy Beyond Civilizations, Why an 11th Century Scholar Matters Today.
So why does this one guy, writing away in the 11th century, still matter to us right now? Well, his legacy is way bigger than just one book. First off, he was basically a Renaissance scientist operating hundreds of years ahead of schedule, doing things like calculating incredibly precise geographical and Earth measurements. Second, he was fiercely convinced that objective truth matters infinitely more than cultural identity. Third, he single-handedly pioneered comparative religious studies. And lastly, his writings acted as a time capsule, preserving detailed descriptions of ancient Indian traditions that would have otherwise vanished into thin air entirely. Surrounded by war and conquest, he chose to preserve knowledge.
Knowledge should cross civilizations. That idea pretty much sums up his entire worldview. For Al-Biruni, learning and finding the truth were always going to be more important than national pride, religious identity, or wherever some conquering king decided to draw a border. He didn't think knowledge belonged to just one culture or one group of people. He saw it as a shared human inheritance. He looked at an entirely foreign civilization, not with the typical arrogance of a conqueror, and not with the blind, unquestioning admiration of a fanatic either. He looked at it with the pure, driven curiosity of a scientist who just wanted to understand.
I want to leave you with a thought to chew on. Al-Biruni lived in an 11th century world that was fiercely, violently divided by religion, by language, and by constant war. Sound familiar? Yet he spent his entire life actively trying to cross those massive divides, just to understand the quote-unquote other. When we step back and look at our own modern world, which, let's be honest, is often just as fragmented and divided, it really begs the question, who today is doing what Al-Biruni did? Who is actually putting in the work to really try and understand? Think about it. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep asking the big questions.